Hello and welcome to my channel. This is going to be a series of classes. Basically, I'm going to teach you how to determine the dates for the life of Jesus Christ. We talked briefly about the list of Roman consuls. It's a list that if you know a fixed date in the present and you go backwards, you can calculate the year in which the Roman consuls ruled. If you knew when they ruled, the events that happened on that day, then you know the date for that event. So I want to talk a little bit more about the list of Roman consuls before we get into the verification of the list through astronomical means. It turns out that Rome was ruled for many years, or started out as kings. Rome had kings. The Romans had kings, and then they had a revolution basically, and they decided they were going to be a democratic nation. They were ruled by the Senate, and to ensure that no one man could gain sufficient power to become a dictator, they set up a system in which two people ruled simultaneously. The Senate would elect two consuls, and they would rule. That also helped if one of the consuls went to war, the other consul remained in Rome, so there was continuity of government. And they only ruled for 1 year. I mean, checks and balances to ensure no one could attain lots of power. That ran out for, or that system worked for several hundred years until Rome, as a country, started dominating the Mediterranean. They started conquering all sorts of nations left and right. And the generals amassed incredible power. You could, for example, Julius Caesar conquered France, Gallia. And if you look at the map, it's a lot bigger than Rome. It's a lot bigger than Italy. So generals started to have accumulating lots of power. And one of those generals, Julius Caesar, decided to take over and become a dictator. So he was returning with his troops into Italy. There was a river called the Rubicon near Rome. The Roman Senate told him, you'll be sentenced to death if you cross the river. He thought about it, and he made a decision and crossed the river. So either he was going to be the boss, or he was going to get killed. And that's where the phrase cross the Rubicon comes from. You make a major life decision. So he became a dictator for about 4 years or so. We'll get into details later. And but he kept the consuls. The institution of the consuls was kept. He became a consul himself, and when Augustus took over after a couple civil wars and became Emperor Augustus, his name used to be Octavian, he also kept the institution of the consuls, and he became like a honorary position with lots of prestige that he would give to his supporters. I mean, a guy helped him, and he says, okay, I'm going to name you consul this year. And that was a very high position. So fortunately, even though we went from a republic to dictatorship to imperial government, the institution of the consuls was kept, and the list of Roman consuls was kept. And you would think everything is set in stone, everything is perfect, but it's not. If you look at for example, the way they used to keep their list, they used to call them the fasti, or the list, capitolini. And if you go, for example, there to a webpage like that, you see that they used to have the list of the consuls all written down in a fresco or something. And only a few of them survive, and they're all fragmentary. So we have to rely on not only that, but other means, such as, for example, this document called the Chronograph of 354. 354 AD, somebody published a little booklet, just like a farmer's almanac, and inside of it were lots of really interesting things. And this is only in 354, which is only about 320 years after Jesus Christ died, was crucified. So this was very close to events as compared to now, which is 2,000 years. So in it you have the fasti of the Roman consuls, and here they're listed. On the side is one of the ways they keep track of the years from the foundation of Rome. And like I said, there are discrepancies. One historian, Livy, kept track of the years one way. Another historian, Varro, kept track of it another way. So we're going to ignore them for now. Maybe later we'll revisit them. But the interesting thing about this list, it's a beautiful list, is that it lists the two consuls at the beginning of the year, and the people that published this list online, and the translators and editors, they didn't know what this meant. I can tell you what this means. This is the day of the year, this is the day of the week, on the 1st of January. And this is what makes this list so incredible. Not only gives you the day of the week on the 1st of January, it gives you the day, the lunar day, the day of the new moon. And what they did is they calculated backwards using an average of 29.5 days average for the moon. And at the beginning of the list, it's pretty accurate, but by the time they extrapolate all the way back, several hundred years back, these are incorrect. Days of the lunar days are incorrect. The other thing they did is they calculated back the bicentennial or bisextus, which is the leap year. So then you know whenever there's a B, it stands for bisextus. It's a little, I'll explain later, but it's the leap year. Of course, the leap year only goes back to when the Julian calendar was enacted, which is 48 AD. But our Stellarium program and all the programs track the Julian calendar all the way back in time. So this is very convenient. And it's a great achievement for the people that made this list. This is essentially the same list that we have today. Any days from 354 AD, like 1700 years ago. Now, there are several interesting things here that you'll notice in this list. Let's see if I can find. They have the date when Peter and Paul died on the 3rd day of the calends of July. I'll explain what the calends of July mean later. But they have the wrong year. And then on top of that, they say that Peter and Paul left for Rome on the same year as the crucifixion, which is also wrong. And then they think that Jesus Christ died on the when Gemino and Gemino were consuls, which from other from Tertullian and others, we know that's on the 15th year of Tiberius. So they thought Jesus Christ died on the same year that he was baptized, which is wrong. So only 300 years after Jesus Christ died, or 320 years, in Rome, where Peter was supposed to be the Helegorman, which is held as the seat of Christianity now, they didn't know. They had no idea. That's really upsetting. They did know that he died on the day of Venus. You see how the question mark is there. For the translator, didn't understand what that meant. The day of Venus was on a Friday, and the 14th day of the moon. So, because it was Nisan 14. So at least they got that detail right. So, what I mean to emphasize here is that the current list of the Roman consuls should not be accepted without verification. We need to verify. Talking about the days of the week, the Romans assigned deities. They have deity for each one of these. Basically planets. So Sunday was the first day of the week. Mondays, the moon, so obviously sun and moon. Tuesday was for Mars. Wednesday was Mercury. So Odin's day is Wednesday. So Odin was Mercury. Thursday is Jupiter. So Jupiter was Thor. Friday was Freya. It stands for Venus. And Saturday is the day of Saturn. That's important when we go to calculate the day in which Jerusalem fell. It fell on the day of Saturn. So I already talked about when Jesus died. It was under the consuls Fufius and Rebellius Geminus. And their conventionally dated were ruled in 29 AD. If Jesus' ministry lasted only 3 years, that would mean that Jesus died on 32 AD. But we know from other sources that he died on 33. So something's off, something's wrong, and we'll figure it out. The current list of Roman consuls, I think I talked to before, is here. And then so the first century starts at 1 AD, and then it goes to 1 BC. So that's really confusing. That we don't have a number 0, and that's because back then, years ago, 0 didn't exist. 0 was invented in the year 600 or something, 900 by Arab mathematicians. It's amazing that anything got done without people knowing about 0. So the computer program needs to have a smooth sequence of dates. So typically you have years BC equals minus astronomical years which is the same as AD years, plus 1. So if you say, well, the year before 1 AD was year 0, and the year before that was minus 1, then the astronomical year or AD year would be minus 1 times minus, that will make it a 1, plus 1 is 2, so it'll be 2 BC. It's a simple formula to remember. Now I want to mention something. Since we're talking about years AD and BC, there has been a recent push to change the way we talk about years and instead of saying year BC, which stands for before Christ, they want to use BCE, which is before Common Era. I find that offensive and insulting, so I will not be using it. It's like they're trying to raise Christianity. Likewise, for year AD, which stands for Anno Domini, the year of our Lord, which is traditionally held to be the year in which Jesus Christ was born, they're trying to replace with Common Era. Once again, I find that really offensive and insulting, so I will not be using those. Next, we'll talk about how do we verify the list. How do we know that the list is correct? It hasn't been expanded by adding additional consuls, for example, confusing a suffix consul with a regular consul, or has a list shrunk by, for example, crossing a name of the list. So for the years, there are not that many years. I mean, from period maybe 40 years, we need to make sure that that small section, 40 years, is correct. And we'll talk about that next. And the key to fix it is by looking at the assassination of, or murder of Julius Caesar. The key to figuring out the error in the Roman Consul's list is to look at the assassination of Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar was a Roman general that gained immense power. He marched into Rome. He decided to cross the Rubicon, the river Rubicon, and take over the government. He declared himself the dictator, and then later the dictator for life. Many senators and many people thought that it was their duty, their sacred duty to fight against Julius Caesar and get rid of him. So they decided to murder him in order to restore the republic. In the last session of the Senate, which was on the Ides of March, they all surrounded him and stabbed him a bunch of times, almost like each senator wanted to stab him at least once. So he was stabbed 23 times. Only one of the wounds was considered mortal, which stabbed him in the chest. Interestingly enough, he's one of his best friends and allies, and he had been adopted as a son, which is Brutus, killed him. And Shakespeare immortalized that as saying, "Et tu, Brutus, you too, Brutus." So that day was declared the parricide, which means you killed your own father. Initially, all the senators were proud of what they did, and they weren't even going to do a funeral for Julius Caesar. They were going to drag him and his body into the river Tiber and just dumping him in the river. But things changed. The public sentiment changed. They decided to read his will, and in his will he named Octavian, a young 18-year-old kid, as his adopted son. He eventually became Augustus Caesar. Augustus is a title that means the great Caesar. His actual name was Octavian. And Julius Caesar had immense wealth, and he decided to give 300 sesterces, it was some sort of Roman coin, to each citizen of Rome. Can you believe that? So after his death, he became even more popular. So then they decided to do a funeral for him instead of just dumping his body in the river. the morning in which they were going to do the funeral, two beings appeared in the sky and lit the funerary pyre. So that creates some superstition. And then Augustus Caesar, he paid for 7 days of funerary games. And during the games, people were looking at the sky and they saw what they thought it was a comet. Some thought it was a star. And people started thinking, well, that was the soul of Julius Caesar being taken up into the sky, into heaven. Amazingly enough, a year later, the star reappeared again, and it was convenient for Augustus to deify his adopted father. So the Senate went ahead and made a declaration that declared Julius Caesar a god, a Roman god. That hadn't happened before. I don't think there's ever a Roman citizen that had been declared a god. Not even Romulus. Romulus was taken up into the sky by Quirinus. Quirinus was a god. So God took Romulus into the sky, the founder of Rome. But Romulus himself not a god. And this is important, that Julius Caesar was a Roman god for Christianity, because then Augustus Caesar took the title of the Son of God. And anybody claiming to be the Son of God would then be basically claiming that he was the emperor, and he would be arrested and executed. For a long time I wondered why Jesus called himself the Son of Man. And when on the few occasions that he was called the Son of God, he didn't deny it, but he's gone, shh, don't tell anybody. And that was the reason. Augustus Caesar's title was the Son of God, and the God was Julius Caesar. And it's all because of this astronomical event that we're going to look at right now. Now, Ovid is important. He's a Roman poet. Let's look at Ovid, because he was almost contemporaneous to what happened. Let's see, he was born in 43 BC, so he was born right around the death of Julius Caesar, and he died in 17. So at most, maybe he was 50 years after the event. So he was very close to the events when people still remembered what happened. So this is 43 BC to 17 AD. And he wrote a book of poems about various metamorphoses. Metamorphosis is changes. Greek fables of people turning into a horse or something. In the last fable he talked about, and last transformation he talked about, is the transformation of Julius Caesar into a Roman god, a pagan god. And he wrote in his book Metamorphosis. Now that book is available in archive. Archive.org is fantastic. I mean, it should be you should have a link to that on your desktop. If we go to archive.org and we look for the 15th chapter of Metamorphosis, and when you get books like this, you should download all of them, because you don't know how long they're going to be up. There have been many books that I've liked that have been removed, or they have copyright issues, and I'm going, how can 1800th book from the 1800s have a copyright? But they're removed, so the best thing to do is to download them into your computer. The other reason to download them is that the search capability here is kind of crude. You can only have exact words. Once you download it, and you download it by going down here and say PDF with text. You have to have either PDF with text is the one that has a searchable. So you click on that, And now you can have a better search capability with this guy. So we search for star, and they're talking how Venus is going to catch the soul of Julius Caesar and make him star in order to make him the divine Julius, or the god Julius. So the book Metamorphosis, this is after he died. So if you look before he died, let's see, it's around here somewhere. He's talking about the chariot. Let's look for that. Yeah, here we go. He's describing the things that happened on the day he died. And it says, the morning star was of dusky hue, and his face was blotched with dark red spots, and Luna's chariot was stained with blood. Luna's chariot is, of course, the moon. And the moon was stained with blood. That means the moon was reddish or red, which would imply a lunar eclipse. And the question is, well, is this like poetic license to say, well, maybe the moon was sad or, hurt, or was it an actual eclipse? And as we shall see later with further evidence, that it was an eclipse. But let's go with the clue for now, that the moon was red. Now, the other interesting thing is it says the morning star. But if you look at the Latin, it's actually Lucifer. Lucifer was translated as the morning star. It turns out that the morning star, which is the appearance, Venus appears in the sky at night. And then all the stars rotate like a clock, and then it goes below the horizon. When it's below the horizon, it cannot be seen. Then it goes around, and when it comes up in the morning, just at dawn, you can see Venus just for about 20 minutes or so. And then the skies light up in blue and you cannot see it anymore. And the ancients didn't know that the Venus that you can see at night was the same, the planet Venus that you can see at night was the same as the morning star. They thought they were different. So they called the appearance of Venus, the planet Venus, in the morning, Lucifer. Lucifer means the light bearer or the light bringer. And Venus, the planet Venus, was for the Greeks was Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and for the Romans, when they saw it in the dark sky at night, it was Venus, the goddess Venus, the pagan goddess Venus. And that will become important when we study the Revelation. It's kind of interesting that Lucifer became associated with Satan, but that's done during the Battle of Heaven in Revelation. I'll show you all that. Another place where you can see so the point in Metamorphosis, some of the quotes are that he came from a foreign land, so he came from Gallia, France, after he conquered it. And he became a god in his own city, blah, blah, blah. He changed into a heavenly body, a flaming star. So that's what happened. And then Luna's chariot was stained with blood. Now, we can verify the translation of a morning star with Lucifer with another interesting version of the Metamorphosis. Here they go word by word. And you see here that Lucifer, the morning star, looked dark blue in the morning, and the moon's chariot was bespattered with blood. So there's no question in translation. The question is, was there a lunar eclipse? That's why we need the a searchable tool to search for eclipses, and we have it. We have the tool LMapWin by S. Takesako. It's a free program. So let's fire it up. Let's see where it is. Oh, there. Let's look for LMapWin. We had to open it in the file location first and then run it from there. And then we search for visible from Rome, because there are lunar eclipses that are visible in a lot of places, especially solar eclipses, but we are only interested in those that can be seen. Rome. So you have the side magnitude selection, Rome. We're going to attempt to see every tiny little lunar eclipse that happened. And then we're going to say display how it looks in Rome. You have it in Rome? I forgot. Where's Rome? There. Rome. Just double check, search Rome. And then we click in the icon that looks like a list. And we say, well, he's said to have died in, I think, 45. Let's start with 46 BC. So that'll be 47 BC, will be minus 47. In 10 years. And in the 10 years, we have all these eclipses. And we need to look for one around March or April. And no, this is minus 40, that's too early. No. So there are no lunar eclipses around the years 40 or 45 BC. So I thought that was strange. I mean, why would Ovid say that it was bespectacled with blood? So then I look at the search criteria, and I say, well, I want to look at penumbral eclipse. Now, moon eclipses are strange. You have a main eclipse, which looks really dark, but the shadow of the Earth extends beyond that. It creates almost like a second shadow, a shadow that's less defined or prominent, and that's called a penumbra. So now, if we look for a penumbral eclipse and we do a search, oh, we didn't do the year. Hold on. From minus, let's say, minus 47, 10 years. We have an eclipse, a penumbral eclipse on, we're looking for March, and there's one on minus 42, 323. That's the only choice. I mean, there's a second one that happened a month later on April 22nd on minus 42. And we immediately notice that the Julian calendar would be for the Ides of March would be March 15. So we immediately noticed that it was not the Julian calendar, because the Julian calendar has completely messed up, and Julius Caesar had just fixed it the year before. So for religious reasons, the first conclusion is the priests were using the Roman lunar calendar. And we have two choices. Minus 42, let's see, March 23 of minus 42, which is 43 BC, and April, let me see, '22 of the year, astronomical year minus 42, or AD year minus 42, which is also 43 BC. There is no other choice that happened in those 10 years that could conceivably be thought of the Ides of March. These are the only two choices. How do we distinguish them? And also, this was a poem. You know, poets tend to exaggerate and make things more florid. So how do we know it was an actual eclipse? And how do we know these are the dates? Because they contradict the list of Roman consuls. Based on the list of Roman consuls, Julius Caesar died in 44 BC. Let's double check on that. You can easily double check on that by where is it? What happened? Let's kill that. Doesn't want to. There we go. And the reason I'm doing all this instead of just showing you the result is to show you how to do it. You can go and check the list of Roman consuls yourself. It's very easy. Just type list of Roman consuls. I'll give you various answers. Most convenient for me is the Wikipedia one. I'm using a bigger resolution so you can see it, so we can't see the little guide on the back. So here the years are increasing. So this is AD. Let's go back to here. The years go up when we go back 34, 45. So Julius Caesar was alive in 46. Then Julius Caesar was alive in 45. Then on the year 44 BC, Julius Caesar started the year with Mark Antony, or Marcus Antonius. And then he died. And Cornelius Dolabella, Publius Cornelius Dolabella, became the consul. So we know that from the list that he died on 44 BC. But this is telling us that he died on 43 BC. So how do we verify it? We verified through the star of Julius Caesar. This star is very important. This star is what made him a god. The only Roman that have become a god since the foundation of Rome, basically. So it was very impressive. So he cannot be dismissed. It was so impressive that he was declared a god.